Cool. Okay. Hey, this is Ella Mine. Come join us on the True Tunes podcast.
Hello, 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 hello.
Hello, I'm John J. Thompson, and this is the True Tunes podcast. A few weeks ago, several friends, trusted friends, pounced on me all at once, saying I needed to stop what I was doing and listen to a brand new artist with a brand new album. Considering the credibility these friends have with me, I acquiesced. I fired up Spotify, found the link, and queued up Dream War by Ella Mine, and I planned to listen while I did some other work.
This light will last if we don't lose the horizon. Oh, there's shadows dancing just beneath the waves. I wanna jump in. I wanna jump in anyway.
But this was not the kind of music that allowed me to do something else while it played politely in the background. It cascaded from my speakers, spreading into all available space, casting both light and shadows at the same time. That voice, that piano, what in the world is this? I decided to grab my headphones and go for a walk in the park and to listen intently with as few distractions as possible. I had no idea what a rewarding hour awaited me. When I got back to my office, I immediately found Ella's website and sent an email asking if I could have a conversation with her for the podcast. I had no idea where she was based, though I thought it might be somewhere in Scandinavia. More on that later. I had no idea if she would even be available or interested. Something told me she was probably already or about to be getting deluged with interview requests from NPR and Pitchfork and who knows who else. My best shot, I figured, was to ask fast. There's no doubt in my mind that this music is going to spread. It is just that good. To my delight, Ella responded within a couple of hours. She had been listening to our podcast, at least since I reached out, and said she would love to talk, so we arranged a socially distant conversation. It wasn't until later that I found out Ella lives right here in Nashville, that she only just graduated from college after studying both at Vanderbilt in her high school years and as a student under Charlie Peacock at Lipscomb, and oh yeah, that I've known her father casually for years. I was absolutely stunned. So on this episode, we are excited to introduce you to an amazing talent and her incredible debut album. But we're also going to dive into the complicated issue of pain and darkness and its relationship to art. Ella has experienced some incredible pain and this album is, in fact, a sort of dance with that demon. Later, we'll turn the keys to the jukebox over to Ella and allow her to take us on a guided tour through her album. It blends progressive rock, classical piano, folk, and more exotic influences. Pain, faith, darkness, light, violence, beauty. They are primal and elemental. Balancing those elements is a struggle we are all born into, whether we want to admit it and engage in the process or not. One of the most sacred uses of art, I believe, is when it acts as a sort of guide or soundtrack for that journey. With no further ado, friends, please welcome Ella Mine. Thank you so much for joining us here on the True Tunes podcast. It's really exciting to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Tell me about yourself and a little bit about your background and where you're from, and we'll get to the record here in a minute, but first I want to hear about you.
Oh, well, I'm from Nashville. I grew up in a songwriting family, sort of. My dad was a songwriter. He was in Nashville because of Charlie Peacock.
We know him.
So, yeah. Wonderful. Oh, my goodness, wonderful guy. I grew up hearing songs being written all the time. In my home, I would, fall asleep listening to songs being created, and that's still a very special memory that I look back on, and I'm sure that was very formative to my passions and my desires and my choices later in life. Piano was my thing. I studied at Vanderbilt's pre-college program in middle and high school, and that was absolutely the coolest thing that I got to do. It was an amazing education and rigorous training, and absolutely delightful, my time there. I'm so grateful for that. And then after that, I got a degree in Charlie Peacock's music program.
At Lipscomb?
At Lipscomb, yeah.
You went to Vanderbilt first?
For pre-college, yeah.
But then you got your actual degree at Lipscomb in the program that Charlie started.
Yeah, which was a blast. It was so fun.
So do you want to tell us who your dad is, or should we leave that kind of a mystery?
Oh, no, I'll tell you. He co-wrote actually 2 of the songs on Dream War on my record. He's Doug McKelvey. I was super honored to have him help me out with a couple tunes on the record.
Piano is your main instrument, and you studied classical piano. Is it real rigorous with a lot of theory and a lot of discipline to it?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Tell me about kind of the inspiration when you were a kid that caused you to want to do this in the first place. Who were some of the artists, and what were some of the songs, things that kind of captured your attention and made you sit down and say, okay, I want to really do this at a high level?
That's a good question. I think the original inspiration was when I realized that playing music could be an emotional outlet. And it had less to do right at the beginning with hearing something and thinking, I want to do that, and more with like the actual experience that I would have at the piano of healing in some ways, and accessing a greater understanding of my own emotions while I played them out. It's this crazy experience, and that was the first time that I kind of recognized that, I think, was when I realized, okay, I probably want to do this forever, regardless of if it becomes a profession or whatever. I know that I want to be skilled enough that I can kind of work through anything that I need to through this instrument. Also, I just think it's beautiful. You want to be a part of something that is so gorgeous. And after that, my earliest artist inspirations were, it's crazy. I'm looking through your podcast. You've probably talked to most of the people who, when I was a kid, were the people who made me think, wow, if I could just bring things into the world the way that these people do. I'm like, oh, gosh, Daniel Smith is one of my biggest inspirations for sure. Waterdeep. Lori Chaffer's vocal was the first female vocal that I heard, and just you use the word when she was on, you use the word muscular, and that's it. She's just effortlessly like muscular and strong and solid, and it's just gorgeous. And that
wasn't it weird how surprised she was when I said that? She was like no one's ever said that before. I'm like, well, what? Everybody's stupid
right.
Because that's obvious.
Yeah. So she was a big one. Probably now my like all-time inspirations would be Beck, the Talking Heads, the Waterboys, Lone Justice.
Waterboys, all right.
Oh, the
Lone
Waterboys,
Justice? Did you just say Lone Justice?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Now that's because you got a cool dad too. That helps with these things
for sure. Yeah. Glenn Hansard,
Yeah.
Brittany Howard is. I'm just more recently been listening to a lot of Brittany Howard, and she's.
Yeah. So when you're a kid and you sit down, you get to a point on an instrument where that initial enchantment, that moment when you say, okay, I want to do this, and you're swept up. It's almost like a crush. You know, you're in a relationship and you got a crush on somebody. And then you hit that first hill. Most people, I would say, kind of stay there. Some people push through that and get to that next level of proficiency. And then they hit that next hill. and then they're like, that's going to be too hard to get to that level of real dexterity where whatever you think in your imagination, you just know where that note is and you can play it. Very few people push past that hill. It sounds to me when I'm listening to your stuff that these years you've been pushing yourself, you've pushed through both of those walls, and at a pretty young age, you're composing stuff that sounds very, very advanced. Did you have this vision for what you wanted to do musically, this style, this sound, for a while, or has it just kind of unfolded gradually?
I'd have to say gradually. The music that has spoken to me most throughout my life has been so varied. As with most people, I think we find we're like surprised by how much we love all different kinds of music. And I'm a big believer that in the idea that we write what we love, like that we create what we love, and whatever you love the most and are listening to the most, that's the kind of thing that you're naturally gonna make. And so I'm really glad for all of the variety in influence that I think has crystallized in ways that I wasn't even aware of as it was happening, and then did just sort of naturally form this style. And I don't think I could have planned it or had a vision for it before all of it happened naturally. You know? It's a great question. Hard to answer that.
I'm not trying to stump you or anything, but that's kind of how these things go. You talk about in your bio that you went through a really difficult season with some illness and then some bad medication that caused you to feel a lot of intense pain and stuff, and that seems to have shaped a lot of your experience. Was music a part of your journey through that season as well? Did that shift how you perceived music and what might be possible to accomplish with music?
100%. I had a severe psychological reaction to a medication that was prescribed for an amplified and chronic pain condition that I developed as a teenager. And real quick on that, I just essentially I feel pain all the time, and pain is like stronger and lasts longer than it ought to. So I'm just like, my body receives pain signals when it shouldn't. So this medication really affected my brain functioning, and just frankly, it was difficult to continue living for months and even years, and I still feel like I'm in recovery, and that was 5 or 6 years ago. But there were specific albums that I can sort of point to and say, like, that kind of helped me survive, helped me feel. It gets so emotional so quick. Beck's album Morning Phase was one of them, and then there's a Drew Holcomb and the Neighbors album, I think it's called The Good Light. Those are 2 albums that I really like. It sounds like an exaggeration, but they helped me survive. Coming out of that experience, realizing that music could be that powerful and could be that meaningful even to one person, made me really want to try to do the same thing for somebody else. So that's kind of the beginning of Dream More.
Did you intend to write songs around that theme, or did you see a theme emerge after you started writing songs after that experience?
That's a great question. I believe that one song on the record was written before I had a vision for the whole thing. And then it happened to fit perfectly in. That's the song Wolves I had written maybe a year before the rest of the record. And then once I had an idea for this entire project, it originally was just a show. I wrote it as a show, not as an album. It was written as a live performance. And I wanted it to be completely immersive, and you get in there and you sit down and it starts and you're in this journey that doesn't let you out until the last note. And so I wrote it basically in chronological order. It was about like 6 months of intensive days of writing, and other than the one song, all of the songs were written with the big picture in mind.
Wow, and Wolves definitely feels like it sits right in there.
Sits right-
Do you think that
it does.
Wolves, with that theme of darkness and terror, almost kind of helped you start the process? Did it have any kind of impetus to it that helped get the thing rolling in the right direction, or was it just an outlier that happens to have fit?
Yeah, I'd say the former. I think at that point in my life, up until maybe a year ago, the only thing that I could go to my instrument and really feel like was worthwhile for me in those moments was this serious working through. Over the last couple years, I don't think I could have done something else, really. So I think Wolves, I think what you're saying is true. Like, it was naturally what I needed to be writing, and then probably did help me get into like the mode or the mood of what the rest would be. And now I'm working on like sweet songs, but I had to really get into the scary and the creepy and the sad and the heavy, and I had to get into all of that.
As you've already heard, Ella Mine is an incredibly mature and thoughtful young artist. So, in an unprecedented move on the True Tunes podcast, we are opening up the jukebox so that Ella can cue up Dream War and give us a guided musical and lyrical tour through this challenging project. So tell me a little bit more about this. You say it's a concept record. What is the concept? I noticed some themes. There's some visual metaphors, but tell me about the concept that sparked it, and take us on the journey through the record. Like, what are some of the signposts that will get us through the woods?
Ooh, interesting. Okay, so we start out with, in the intro, just kind of the whole band works together to make what I hope is an appealing sort of soundscape where it's just beautiful and kind of interesting, and you just kind of want to exist in it. And lyrically what's happening is this kind of looking out over at the world, maybe at the ocean, with the sunset, and you're just taking it in, and you're like, I want to be here. I want to be fully present in this beautiful world, and I want to give myself to the world. I want to. One of the lines there is though there are shadows dancing just beneath the waves, I want to jump in. There's some unknown, there's some mystery, maybe some danger, but I want to be there for it.
Oh, there's shadows dancing just beneath the waves. I wanna jump in. I wanna jump in anyway.
Very quickly after that, the first bit of devastation is introduced in the song Wolves. And that's kind of like our first experience of something externally being harmful to us, or scary or harmful. And this realization that we're going to be affected by the darkness outside of us. Following that, we move into Dream War, which is, I describe Dream War as kind of a weary white flag. It's this, just like, I don't want this fight. This is way harder than I thought it was going to be. And it's taking too much of a toll on me, and I can't even remember why I was so enchanted with whatever it is I was enchanted with. This is painful, and I just want it to end.
If I ran, then I ran with the fire of fear, and the flames that you saw were lies made real. If you came, then you came with a cold outside. From breaking
Following that, we have the introduction of this theme of I don't want to close my eyes, I don't want to dream again, which will run kind of throughout the whole album. Of it was this dream that I had that I pursued that kind of turned on its head and really bit me, and I don't want to do it again. I'm like, it's the same kind of idea as like if you get hurt in a relationship and you're like, I'm gonna be closed off.
I don't wanna close my eyes, I don't wanna dream again. I don't wanna fall asleep, no, I don't wanna dream again. Will I ever get to sleep without a killing in my head? I don't want to close my eyes, I don't want to dream again.
Following that is Bridge Underwater, which to me is maybe a kind of breath of fresh air at that point, sort of, but it's also sad. It's this like sad reflection and on something. We have this bridge that is supposed to be there's something that a bridge has a purpose, but it's underwater. Some dreams have been flooded there.
When morning cascades in a shimmering light, I can't for the life of me open my eyes, 'cause I'm caught in a memory of you from a friendlier time. I swore we were on the same shore till the river grew wide. There's a bridge underwater, and earth flood running over. And you said if I wouldn't wake up, then the water would rise. Well, when you rise.
Following that, we have this instrumental called Overtide that I guess I should say all of the tracks lead into each other, so it's mostly a seamless sort of experience. So in Overtide, I love the effects of details, so like the impacts that sounds have on us and even what tempo can do to us physically. So Overtide starts out at the same tempo as Bridge Underwater, and then it gets rapidly quicker as like these electric guitars are adding layers that are making it feel more intense. But I feel personally like in the studios we were recording this, every time that we would work with Overtide, my heart rate would go up as the song as the song is happening, like with the tempo. That just helps you feel like, okay, something terrible is happening, and like I'm being flooded or just overcome with something negative. that brings us to Waters Rise, which is probably my favorite track on the record. It was the first single. To me, Waters Rise is the point in the album of greatest devastation, where something exterior to yourself is just stronger than you are, and you're the one that bends and breaks to the will of this exterior force. It's a really sad song. I think it's a difficult one to perform for me because it is so emotional to be in this position of, I guess, kind of a victim. It's kind of the song from the perspective of being a victim to something outside of yourself.
And the heart is caught in the crossfire of dreams, but dreams are just desire. Heart is like against flame, burns in fire, painting me. And it's dark against time, swirling the waters rise. Bodies shine with endless eyes like against flame, burns in fire, painting me.
And from there, we go to Walls, which I got to feature my husband's band, the Arcadian Wild, on this song. And they're a chamber folk band, and so it's a sort of a different style from most of the album. But I love how it functions in the arc of the record, because we've just moved from... Okay, side note, I'm painting a piece for each song, and everything up until Walls is a landscape sort of deal, where it's very big land structures, like natural land structures that are probably mostly dangerous. And so we're coming from this like huge waterfall, and then we get to Walls, and all of a sudden the perspective is turned and we're looking inward. And Walls is, in that song, we have this decision that I am just going to take care of myself. I am not going to be vulnerable with anybody else. I'm not going to make the kinds of connections in which I can be hurt. And if I'm just by myself, I'll be fine because I can do it. And that's
which we all
that,
know is totally true, right?
Yeah, right.
Nothing's going to go wrong there.
If I could find a love that wouldn't ravage mine, maybe then I wouldn't be afraid to step outside. I'm dancing with the dark, alone between these walls.
Which is why, yeah, it's followed by Where's She Now, which is this revelation of I am messed up too. Like, even when it's just me and there's nobody else, I have blood on my hands, I have blood at my feet, I have blood in my vision. It's this realization of my own wretchedness, sort of.
Oh, there's blood in my hands. I dreamed I killed a man. Oh, memory washed away. My knife seen not the wound, seen not the wound you made. Oh, there's blood in my feet. I'm neither lovely nor a queen. Yet it's spread like a wildfire, and it burns so cruelly.
And that song ends with a, like, sort of a death toll. and moves into Sound and Fury, which is it's an adjustment of perspective that I think a lot of people have after, like, for instance, a death of somebody that you know, or when some great tragedy happens, you kind of zoom back and look at everything and you see your past differently. You see the way that you are fitting into the world differently, and you see what the possibilities for the future are differently. It's just this huge perspective change. And I don't want to get too detailed because this is interpreted so many different ways.
Tomorrow and tomorrow creep in from day to day. We are walking shadows, we are players on the stage. One night to make us kings ourselves, to orchestrate a war, to fret and strut our hour, and then be heard no more. And crowned in glory, we shouted till we raised a holy ruckus. Sound and fury, they signify, they're signifying nothing. All I see is red, red rain, flooding into every yesterday. Tomorrow's light is clouded by the fray of red, red rain.
From there, we go to the song Wheel of Love, which is a question song and was the most difficult for me to write because I knew where I wanted to get and I knew where I was at that point, and I had to figure out how to write this song that moves us from Sound and Fury to sort of coming back around again to the decision to dream and to hope and to love. And I remember just banging my head against the wall right in the piano room while I was trying to write this song, just trying to figure out, how do humans do this? Why do we go back to the things that we know they're awesome, but we know they're gonna hurt us? And so Wheel of Love just asks those questions.
If this wheel of love is turning slowly, oh, you love and you lose, or you live your life lonely. And what you give, how you know it might not be turning you, so you give it up freely, babe. Or you guard it so tight that no one can get through. In the dark of your eyes, in the shadow of your wall, you don't hear the cries of the people as they fall from the top of the wheel and are crushed by the gear, alive in love, dreaming and trying, believing and buying, and hurt by love, broken and frightened, loving and dying, remade by love.
From there, we move to the song Fire, which it's a kind of an affirmation of saying, I can't count on this world. I can't count on the people around me. I can't count on anything that seems secure. I can't love in this world without being hurt. I can't dream in this world without my hope being hurt. And I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm going to run again. The chorus is all run again, replace the fire. It was kind of difficult to put this song in the record because I know that some people aren't at that place yet. They're still in just the questioning, or in the I just want to be by myself. But I also wanted to be kind to anybody who's sticking through the whole record, and to give this moment of what I hope is hope, and just this bold and ridiculous decision to again love or dream. And the bridge of that song contains the lyrics that I think are most important to me in the whole record, and that's I'll lay down in my burning bed, though darkened thoughts run through my head. I'll focus on the light instead and close my eyes and dream again.
I'll lay down in my burning bed, with darkened thoughts run through my head, and I'll focus on the light instead, close my eyes and dream again. On again, replace the fire. On again, replace the fire.
And then from there we move into an outro that is very similar to the intro, but that at this point includes more wisdom of what you're actually getting yourself into, and the idea of the shadows under the waves at this point is much more meaningful, and the decision to want to be present is just a much more mature decision at that point, and takes a lot more guts, I guess. I don't know if you wanted all that. That's so much.
That's great.
Sorry.
Running fast towards a sunlit sky. This light will last if we don't lose the horizon. Oh, there's shadows dancing just beneath the waves. I've gotta jump in. I've gotta jump in anyway.
Thanks for allowing us such an intimate glimpse of the artistic process, Ella. Bruce, roll part 2 of the interview. Has it occurred to you how interesting it is that you went through your journey of pain and isolation and darkness and then wrote about it just in time for everybody else in the world to have to go through this really strange journey of pain and isolation and darkness, and you just happen to have given us kind of a soundtrack. Have you had any thoughts about how these ideas resonate with what's going on with this pandemic and the unrest and all of the decay that we see kind of happening around us? It feels almost like you could have set out to write this record about 2020.
Well, yeah, I think the music was, in my writing, I was fueled by my personal experience, but I knew from the beginning the album is not about my experience. I I could access the right feelings and the right words because of my experience. But truly, the point of the record is to look at the question of, I want to remember how Drew Miller wrote this question so perfectly. About Dream, where he said, how can we again love or hope or dream when our first loves have been dashed, our first hopes ravaged, and our first dreams crushed? That kind of idea of after like believing in something or really giving ourselves to something that we think is good and is going to be good, and putting ourselves out there, whether it's pursuing something that we believe in or believing in something in itself, and then are really devastated by having put ourselves out there. How can we do it again? And I think that is a question that everybody is dealing with in some way or another right now, especially just the crazy human ability to be really hurt and then to get up and do the same thing or put yourself in the same position again is amazing. And the question in the album is kind of why do we do that? How can we do that? Should we do that? So yeah, I totally see what you're saying, that I had never thought of it as a soundtrack to this year, but that's great.
You do a lot of visual art as well. You're multidisciplinary when it comes to your creativity.
Yeah, I just started oil painting in January, actually, and am loving it. I've been getting to do some pieces for other artists' projects, which has been really cool. And until then, I just kind of doodle all the time. I know artists hate the word doodle, but that's why I feel like I can use it, because I genuinely I'm not a trained artist at all.
I'm interested in the idea of multidisciplinary creativity. Like, does visual art stimulate the way you think musically?
For sure.
Does it change things? There's also a lot of literature going on in your music. I mean, anybody under 50 that references Frederick Buechner is somebody I want to hang out with. What's on your bookshelf? Like, what are some of the authors that have been speaking into your mind, and how do you feel that your literary influences have shaped what you're doing with your music?
Well, in Dream War, the biggest literary influence is Shakespeare. There is a couplet sort of songs in the middle of the album that are based on one where she now is based on Lady Macbeth's last soliloquy before she takes her life. And then following that is a song called Sound and Fury, which is based on Macbeth's response to hearing the news, his tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow speech, which is just gorgeously written. And I took some lines almost directly
Sound and Fury
from because they're so good. Yeah, Sound and Fury. That's the biggest influence in Dream War. Right now I'm reading a book called How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi, which so far is a difficult read, but it is so good. I love his writing.
But have you grown up reading? Like, are you a reader in general?
My education was, as a kid, was literature based, which I think is awesome. But I don't identify as a heavy reader. Through quarantine. I have been. My husband and I both will read for a couple hours in the morning, which is awesome, and I hope we can carry that into our regular lives. Yeah.
I like that we still think there's a regular life coming, so somehow this isn't regular. That's good. Yeah. I hope that's true. In a lot of your supporting literature, you refer to this idea of whatever fire you want to support people in whatever fire they tend. And I like that. It's a generous term. What does that mean to you? Like when you're composing a phrase like that, and you're thinking of your audience, and you're trying to encourage them now you've taken on this journey, what does that mean, the fire that they tend? Like, what are you hoping that this music does for them with that fire?
Okay, I hope I don't mix my metaphors here. It gets a little confusing in the record because fire is a symbol for, in some literature, it's a symbol for life. It's a symbol for what sustains you. It's a symbol for what keeps you going. It's this idea of passion. And then in another sense, it's a symbol of danger. And when it gets out of control, it's destruction. And I think this is the part of what I wrote that is still a little bit mysterious to me, and I don't quite understand. Though I feel that it works, I don't quite have a handle on it. But the first time that fire comes up in the album is in the title track in Dream War. And it's at that point, it's sort of an element of fear. But I also see, I don't know, this is weird. I also see that fire is like very connected to the sun. And so we even have the idea in the very beginning of there's like this flame that you're running towards and that you don't want to lose, and that's the sun. And then all of a sudden, when things have gotten dark or twisted, the fire is this like element of fear. So there's this like fire that you've wanted to somehow hold and move toward, but then that has maybe gotten out of control and has been what actually has been damaging. I think what I'm trying to get at is we all have the experience of pursuing something. It can even be a gift that you have, or a talent that you have. Maybe it's relationships, or maybe it's something that's very like within yourself and is a talent. But it's hard to keep giving ourselves to the things that we know aren't going to play out perfectly. And my desire for this record, if for anybody who is sweet enough to take the time to go through the whole thing, I hope as a listener that you're encouraged to keep the light ablaze within you, and whatever it is that is feels really meaningful to you, to keep going at it, keep loving the people around you, and keep giving yourself to beliefs and to dreams that you know are not going to be easy to hold on to.
Tell me about the foreign language inclusion, and what are you accomplishing with the language shifts there? So
my mom's parents came to America from Norway after the Nazi occupation of Norway. They lived through that crazy, difficult time, and I've always loved what I know of the culture, what they brought with them of the culture. And whenever I would hear them speak the language, I was just mesmerized by it. It's this amazing, it's a very strong language. I think that a small word will have a huge meaning, and I see it as a sort of an intense language in that way that you can have a very like basic short sentence and it means a lot. I don't know if that makes sense. So the idea in using that in Wolves, the verse that's in Norwegian is if you translate it, it's very similar to the previous verse in English, but the words are more intense. it's just an amplification, or a slightly even bigger or darker or more intense version of these same ideas. And But yeah, so in one sense, I love the language, and I love getting the opportunity to honor my my family in just by using it in my art. But I also think that the actual meaning of the words and the impact of the sounds is functional in amplifying the intensity of the song. If that makes sense.
It seems also that this is very spiritual without putting up any kind of signifiers that it is specifically denominational, like this is a religious record for this group of people. It's written, it seems to be in a way that can kind of be approachable by anybody. Is that just my imagination, or did you kind of construct a spirituality to it that is sort of non-denominational?
I don't think, well, that's hard to say. I think whatever it is that you detect probably just comes straight through me. I think it's hard to hide what we really believe, you know. I mean, art is you have to be honest, and so I'm sure that my spirituality can be perceived throughout the record, but I myself am a Christian, and the last thing that I would want is for somebody to think that this isn't for them to listen to, or that they won't be able to connect with it if they're not, if they don't believe the same things that I do. But I'm sure that my faith is impossible to remove from my work. I guess I was definitely lucky to have personal conversations with people like Charlie Peacock who are saying, listen, you can do this. You absolutely can. You can make really intentional and skillful work, and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to put it in this other category over here, and people will tell you have to, and you don't have to. You can make good art for the sake of it being good art, and whatever can come out of that. And one of my favorite things that I heard after performing this show for the first time was somebody that said, "It didn't make me feel good." And I was like, cool. Okay, that's what I want is for us to get into what doesn't feel good here. And then if you, I don't know, I remember when I was writing once and having difficulty with the wheel of love, with this kind of turn in perspective, and I called my dad and was like, how can I do it? Like, this is so difficult to make it feel natural, and he said, you have to go through the hard work here. It probably has to be difficult for you in order for what you ultimately arrive at to feel real and natural, and not to feel like this artificially imposed positive ending, you know. And so that's what happened. It was I went through a process to get to that, what I would call hard-earned hope at the end.
Any last words for your new fans, people that are just discovering your music for the first time, and they're listening to this thing going, oh my gosh, like they've just kind of wandered into the woods and found this music?
Oh man. Oh, I'm so glad. I honestly, this sounds so, it's hard to know if it sounds genuine or not, but I want to know you. You know, I want to hear how, if this music is meaningful to you, let me know. It's my favorite thing in the world to get a message from somebody saying, hey, I'm going through this, and this record helped me feel like I was understood, or, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, that, and I've probably cheesy at this point, but I hope that you don't give up on your dreams and on your loves, and that you continue to fight with what you've got to live well. That's all.
It's clear that Ella Mine and her extended musical community have an artistic and purposeful vision that they are well equipped to bring to life. I'm sure you'll join us in watching her already mature creative approach continue to bloom. You've heard a few songs on the weekly Spotify mixtape already, and you'll keep hearing more, but do follow her on your own as well. I can't wait to see this music performed live someday. Thank you, Ella, for joining us today, and welcome to the tribe. As I climb up on my soapbox this time, I'm thinking about the dark. For as long as I can remember, I have had a special love for music and film and art in general, I guess, that deals with darker themes. It goes back, seriously, to when I was really, really young. I can recall being about 7 years old and diving deep into Riders on the Storm by The Doors, Folsom Prison Blues by Johnny Cash, and House of the Rising Sun by both the Animals and Dylan, all of which was at least a generation ahead of me. I also loved Hitchcock and Stephen King and Salvador Dali, and constantly sought out music that sounded fractured, much more than stuff that sounded perfect. The Christian and gospel music I related to the most was almost always coming from the more shadowy end of the church. I've long believed that it was because of the trauma I experienced as a kid. I needed art that would help me deal with the world the way it really was, not the way, in my pain, I wished it was. A big part of coping with that struggle was going to require using my imagination to fight some battles so that I would be ready for them in the real world when the time came. Shiny, happy stuff just didn't resonate with me the same way. It felt like marketing copy. But over time, I've come to realize something else about those darker shades. I mentioned it when I was talking with Ella. There's nothing like a really dark night to make me hunger for the morning. The best stuff, the really true expression of darkness, provokes me to strain for the light, as faint as it may be. I think that's why I get so annoyed when modern storytellers mess with the classics. The whole point of great Gothic art is not to glorify the darkness, it's to make us long for the light. At least that's how I've always felt about it. I think that one of the ways in which faith-based art often lets us down is that it fears the dark. And I think that is an extension of a general discomfort with darkness that permeates the Christian world due to, well, bad theology. We allow our cultural sensitivities, our aesthetic preferences, our comforts to shape the spaces we inhabit and to capture our imaginations much more than we should. I would suggest that if we were to take some time to reflect on the condition of the world we are in, the injustice, the brokenness, the fear, the disease, the physical and spiritual death, instead of inoculating ourselves to it, if we were to sit in it for a while and feel it, and then we were to take some time to meditate on what the gospel story really is, this insurgency of light against darkness, of love against hatred and loneliness, of sacrifice against conquest, and that the key to it all is to lay down our lives for our friends and our enemies. We might start to sing some songs and tell some stories and paint some pictures that the people walking to our left and our right would relate to. It seems like that's exactly what Jesus did. In his introduction to the ministry of Jesus, John reminds us that the light shines in the darkness and the darkness did not comprehend it. It never knew what hit it. I added that last bit. When art gets too dark or too light, it loses the contrast. It's like food that is too sweet or too salty. The most effective stuff lives right there in the tension. It usually takes artists a long time to figure that out. That Ella has already captured that dichotomy on her very first project is truly remarkable. I really believe this is the kind of work that is going to speak to a lot of people. She has allowed her trials to be turned into musical gold, and that doesn't happen without fire. If you are going through a dark time right now, may peace and light be with you. It may just be a candle's worth of light, but I pray that you'll see it. And if you are an artist, don't be afraid to go into those caves and create. There are a lot of us in there with you, waiting for you to give voice to our questions, our fears, and our prayers. And don't rush to turn the floodlights on. Our eyes are adjusting, straining to discern the true light from the shining distractions. Okay, I'm climbing off my soapbox now. That's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. It's time for me to enthusiastically invite you to consider sponsoring a child through visiontrust.org. Join me in helping to bring light, life, and love to one vulnerable, beautiful child somewhere in the world. I'm looking at a picture of Angel right now. He's 7 years old and lives in Peru. And in this photo, he's showing me his toothbrush, his hot pink plastic cup, and his best smile. It's fantastic. We sponsor Angel for just $40 a month, and that allows Vision Trust to provide him with food, education, attention, and much more through the love of a local hero Angel can look up to and grow up alongside. Our family has been sponsoring children around the world for many years, and it has been a fantastic experience. Some of the best money we have ever invested anywhere. Find the link on the show notes page at truetunes.com for more information, or just go to visiontrust.org. And if you do sponsor a child, drop me a line and let me know. We're going to set up a special sponsors group here at True Tunes. To all of our new listeners, welcome to the tribe. Please make sure to subscribe to the email list at truetunes.com, like our Facebook page, and follow the Gallery Stage mixtape on Spotify. Our next giveaway, which will include another super rare 7-inch vinyl single from the Electric Jesus soundtrack, is coming very soon, and you have to be on the email list to win. We also recently launched an Instagram account, so I have one more thing to keep track of. You can find us there at True Tunes Music. Please leave us good reviews and ratings on Apple and wherever you can, and tell your friends about the show. And if you are interested in becoming a sponsor, drop me a line at truetunesmusic@gmail.com. A detailed list of all songs used on this episode, as well as links to Ella Mine and our sponsors, can be found on the show notes page for episode 14 at truetunes.com. For this episode, we featured mostly Ella Mine's music with a hefty dose of music from the Soundstripe Artists Group. As always, we are ever grateful for the special instrumental mix of Full Circle that Phil Keggy and Rex Paul have provided for our theme song. The True Tunes podcast is produced, engineered, and edited by Bruce A. Brown for Gyroscope Productions. The contents of the podcast are protected by U.S. copyright law and are the intellectual property of Gyroscope Productions, with the exception of songs or clips that are from previously copywritten materials. Everything on this episode is used by permission or under fair use provisions. This program is intended for the private use of our listening audience. Gyroscope Productions can be reached at truetunesmusic@gmail.com or P.O. Box 60401, Nashville, Tennessee 37206. Until next time, this is JJT saying stay tuned and stay true.
Hey over there. Hey Mr. DJ. Next time you play a record, make sure the needle's in the groove. The edge doesn't sound so nice.